So where good dissertation or thesis ideas come from? In this video, I'm going to explain 6 strategies you can use to come up with initial dissertation or thesis research ideas. Hi everyone, I'm Miguel Moital. I am the founder and chief content developer of the Dissertation Academy. And here in the Academy, we are all about bringing you unique tips and tools to help you write a better dissertation. Earlier this summer, I received an email from one of my students who's starting her final year. This was the student's message. With final year slowly creeping up, I am trying to begin to brainstorm any dissertation ideas or topics I may consider writing about. I am aware that we have to submit a proposal too at the end of August. I'm emailing to ask what your advice would be when starting this process, as I have enjoyed your previous modules and style of teaching. Any advice would be greatly appreciated on where and how to begin this process. As with most unique tips and tools developed for the Dissertation Academy, I started putting together a script containing the various ways that can be used to come up with dissertation ideas. And this video is a result of that work. So where good dissertation or thesis ideas come from? Time to find out. This tutorial is going to use the 3 pillars of research as a basis to explain where good dissertation ideas come from. If you haven't watched the video yet, please do so before you watch this tutorial. The link is in the description below, as well as at the top right-hand side of your screen. The theory part of the 3 pillars comprises both process and content. And in this presentation, I'm not going to differentiate between them. I'm going to refer to them together. So how can we use these to identify initial research ideas? There are basically 2 approaches, a theory-oriented approach and a context-oriented approach. Time to look at each of these approaches in more detail. Reading journal articles is essential to adopt a theory perspective when developing initial research ideas. This is because theories are mainly developed in journal articles, and the entire discussion in them tends to be theory-oriented. Journal articles can be quite dense pieces of work, and it's not always easy to navigate through them. But there are a few tricks that you can employ in order to use them in a targeted way. Ask yourself, what are the best parts to look at if you are looking for inspiration for your dissertation topic? While inspiration can come from any of the sections in a journal article, I think that the abstract methodology and the limitations and further research sections are the most likely to provide you with good ideas for your dissertation. When you are reading journal articles to inspire a dissertation idea that is already very theoretically focused, you can adopt 3 different strategies. The first one is to look at an article and adopt the same focus and theory, but just do the research in a different context. Or in other words, this strategy is where you pick up a study from a different context and replicate it in your own chosen context. Let's see a couple of examples. So this study is about perceptions of benefits delivered by different charity activities. And if we look at the context elements described in the abstract, we see that the research focuses on 11 charity support activities. It is carried out from a supporter's perspective, and it was done in Australia. So we could seek to do the same study, but in a different context. Focus on a different set of charity support activities from those considered by this study. We could adopt a different perspective, for example, not from charity supporters, but charity managers, or we could do the same study but in a different location. A second example comes from a study on the factors influencing conspicuous consumption in clothing, which was carried out by a student of mine a few years ago. And in the limitations and further research, the study identified a limitation and suggested a way of overcoming that limitation. The limitation is that the study only focused on one type of conspicuous product, clothing, and therefore future research could be carried out focusing on other conspicuous products, such as tourism. If you adopt this strategy, there will be little theoretical development because you're going to adopt someone's study design and replicate it in a different context. This doesn't mean that you cannot do some changes from a theory perspective, but you start with a solid theoretical basis by getting inspiration from an existing study. A second strategy that you can adopt from reading journal articles involves broadly focusing on the same issues, but embrace some theory changes. Let's go back to the abstract on the benefits of charity activities. If we look at it, we also see that the study analyzed each activity against 4 benefit dimensions: material, social, expressive, and personal commitment. An alternative approach would be to do fairly the same study, but try to research it along a different set of benefit dimensions. A third strategy that you can employ when you read journal articles is to use them as a source of inspiration for ideas that go beyond the immediate focus of the paper. Most papers will have a section on limitations and further research, and here it is very common for the authors to suggest additional areas of research. The example comes from a study on the techniques, outputs and outcomes of circulation management at exhibitions. This is a paper I've published in an events management journal, co-authored with one of my undergraduate students. And in the section on the limitations and further research, we identified 2 possible areas of research based on our own study. One focuses on the opportunity to explore specific links between the 3 elements in the research: techniques, outputs, and outcomes. And the paper even goes further by suggesting what methods could be used to look at that, in this instance, the means end theory. The second suggestion focuses on examining how the factors influencing the techniques inform the deployment of techniques and the preference for outputs and outcomes. So if I wanted to build on this study, I could pick up either idea and adopt it as my own research topic. In addition to the 3 strategies related to using journal articles as a source of inspiration, you can also revisit all the topics that you covered in your course and pick up one that you really liked to become the focus of your dissertation. I teach consumer psychology for events, and a few years ago I had a student who came to the first supervisory meeting with a fairly defined idea for her research. 2 of the topics that I had covered in the consumer psychology module were recreation specialization and leisure constraints. And the student remembered those 2 topics and said that she wanted to research the relationship between leisure constraints and recreation specialization. This was a very interesting research area, basically understanding what prevents people at different levels of specialization, such as novice, intermediate, and experts, from attending events where their hobby is celebrated. This dissertation went on to be a very good one, to the point that we managed to publish it in an events management journal. This was only possible because the study had a very clear theoretical focus that had not been researched before. Having understood how you can develop initial research ideas using a theory perspective, it's time to understand how you can do it from a context perspective. Most students will start their dissertation from a context perspective. I've seen students arriving at their initial research idea by using different clues from their personal context. The first one is related to their career plans. So many students know what they want to do once they graduate, and they try to align their dissertation to those plans. An example comes from 2 students of mine who wanted to pursue a career in fashion marketing. The idea for their topics came from the growing role of online influencers in shaping fashion brand perceptions and buying. Obviously, at the beginning, they didn't know exactly what they wanted to do about online influencers and fashion marketing, but through work they evolved to clearly define the area of research. One of the students examined the brand elements embedded within influencers' Instagram posts when attending fashion marketing events, while the other one looked at the effectiveness of Instagram influencer stories during product launch events on the equity of fashion brands. So even though they started from a very similar perspective, they arrived at very different research ideas. A second source of ideas relates to the personal connection of the student with a cause or an interest. One example comes from a student who did a lot of charity work, and therefore she used her involvement in a cause as a source of inspiration. She ended up looking at charity giving and more specifically the effects of a personal illness diagnosis on charity donation behavior. Another example comes from a student whose hobby was rock climbing. So she looked at the motivation to travel to Slovakia to undertake extreme sports activities with a focus on rock climbing. Another source of inspiration involves students picking up on trends, be them societal or market-related. One student was very intrigued by a trend related to FOMO, fear of missing out. She had noticed that happening across society with media coverage and people talking about it, so she wanted to do a research on that topic. So she ended up doing a study on the triggers of fear of missing out via event images posted on social media. Another student noticed the growth in the number and size of online brands. So she decided to do her dissertation around that topic. In particular, she looked at emotional attachment and how live brand events are a tool for enhancing emotional attachment to online-only brands. In her particular case, the specific online-only brand she decided to focus on was Spotify. Another source of inspiration comes from the placement or the professional experience of the student. Let me give you two examples. In one case, the student helped to organize exhibitions as part of her placement. And during that time, she got intrigued about managing circulation within the venue. How can it be used to maximize results for exhibitors and exhibition owners? So she ended up researching the techniques, outputs and outcomes of circulation management at exhibitions. Another student of mine worked for a corporate events agency during her placement. She got interested in how agencies developed relationships with clients to maximize business activity. After doing some research, she identified several possible perspectives she could take to address the question. She ended up looking at it from a trust perspective. More specifically, she ended up developing an adaptive model of trust development practices that underpinned corporate client event agency relationships. I hope this video has inspired you to come up with different dissertation ideas. And if you are at the beginning, it's really useful to develop different ideas so that you can choose one that is really good and also one that you think you will enjoy doing. I would love to hear your feedback about all these strategies that can be used to come up with dissertation and thesis ideas. If you haven't got a clear idea yet, which strategies do you think will be most useful to you? If you already settled for an idea, what strategy or strategies did you employ to arrive at it? Let me know in the comments below how you're planning to deal with coming up with ideas or where your idea came from. If you want to know more about how to write great dissertations, tap the screen on the right-hand side for more videos, and check the description below for more videos containing unique tips and tools to help you write a better dissertation. If you liked the video, give it a thumbs up, and don't forget to subscribe to the Dissertation Academy channel, as this will help the channel to grow. That's all for now. See you in the next video.